one adjustment to that light. Okay, thank you very much for doing this. Okay, and so if you could boil games programming down to one idea, one primary concept, what would it be?
Well, I mean, how can you answer that? One concept for the whole bloody thing.
I like living in the countryside, and ended up buying this little house in Wales. It's a beautiful little valley, very isolated place, very beautiful. I wanted to have a bit of space for beasties, really. I like to keep pet sheep. I mean, when you're getting stressed out in front of the machine and you're indoors all day, it's so nice just to be able to like go out and take a stroll in the field, because you can't really be stressed out around sheep.
Jeff's always just made peace, I think, with living in the sideline. He's never given up on game design as a discipline, as a vocation. And it's all very much work, but it is like, you know, this kind of peaceful kind of compromise. This is going to be the work, but I'm only going to agree to do this amount of work for something that I really love. I mean, to me, that's the ideal expression of what video games are. It's like turning mathematics into something you can feel.
When I was 13 or maybe younger than that, I can remember lying in the dark, listening to music. And in my head, I would imagine like sort of abstract geometric shapes, sort of doing stuff in time to the music. I was like 14 years old, sitting there daydreaming in my English class. You know, people daydream about being a rock star and playing the guitar on the stage. I was daydreaming about doing something I didn't quite know what, but with big screens with stuff happening on them and lights going off. Just there as part of my imagination. It's a kind of voluntary synesthesia, maybe you'd call it. And I always wanted one day to make a machine that would let me somehow perform these things that I have in my head and put them out on a screen for other people to see. After I'd been doing video games for a while, I just thought, why don't I try making this light instrument? And that became this 4-player interactive light synth. And that could have been the start of something extraordinary.
The main problem was that I could never sell it, because nobody knows they want it, and they won't know they want it until they've actually tried it. So in the end, the only way I've been able to develop the techniques is by bringing it into video games.
Jeff Minter is an indie video game legend. It's not easy to have a lifetime in the world of video games. The fact that Jeff is still doing it is kind of mind-blowing.
Jeff has been right at the top of his game for over 40 years now.
I've been playing, appreciating, making video games for over 40 years. And I can't name anyone else but Jeff, still doing his own stuff.
Everything Jeff creates is Jeff in a game. What he's making is stuff he makes out of love.
I mean, Jeff has a purity to his work, and it's always about the creation. It's never about the other stuff that comes along with making something in a video game sense.
Video games are his whole life, but things have changed around him.
The video game industry is worth close to $300 billion today. That's bigger than it's ever been. Most of that money is being controlled by this small number of conglomerates. They're not really interested in the kinds of smaller, self-contained games that Jeff makes. And yet, he's survived. How did he do that?
Hello. The microphone is on. All right. Welcome to the hashtag We Are IndieDev live stream. That was just a trailer for the movie Heart of Neon, documentary about IndieDev. Jeff Minter. He inspired the heck out of me, and he inspired some other people. And the film is about how he managed to sustain a 40-year career making video games independent of the major labels, more or less. I mean, he dabbled with some Atari stuff, but I think the point is still well made. And so through my research for the film and the promotion efforts and stuff, I came to be aware that the indie dev scene is currently massive and very, very active. And I figured if I don't know it exists, then maybe everybody else doesn't know it exists. So, and it helps provide a bit of context for people who don't know who Jeff is, right? You know, Jeff isn't this guy who's just the only person in the world doing this kind of stuff because he's crazy. Thousands upon thousands of people of all ages, all races, all parts of the globe, anywhere where people can type on a keyboard and create code, are making games. And I want to share some of those stories with you to it's just everybody's got a Heart of Neon out there, and it's just wonderful, and I think it's great. So so that's my mission. I also partnered with the International Game Developers Association Foundation. Alyssa Wallace was really excited about the film and wanted to help get the word out, right? And who am I to say no? So to that end, I interviewed Alyssa about the IGDA Foundation to talk a little bit about what they do and how they may be able to help you or other indie devs out there in the world. You'd never know. Anyway, here is Alyssa. Oops. And any second now. Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you for your time today. As people might already know, it is my great privilege and Heart of Neon's privilege to be partnering with the International Game Developers Association Foundation for this campaign. And what I wanted you to do today, Alyssa, was to share with the audience a little bit more detail about what it is the IGDAF does.
Thank you, and Paul, thanks so much for including the IGDA Foundation in the promotional efforts for Heart of Neon. We are delighted to have been chosen, and so thank you very much. And I wanted to start by quickly describing the difference between the IGDA and the IGDA Foundation, because obviously it sounds like we're one of the same. However, the IGDA is a membership organization. As most people are very familiar with the IGDA, they are separate. They have a separate board. They have a separate executive director. I run the IGDA Foundation, which is a charity that is focused on serving underrepresented and marginalized people who want to work in the games industry. So we're very small relative to the IGDA. We are what's considered in the United States a 501c3, which is a tax category for charities. And we have 2 or 3 main programs every year that we select people who have been marginalized or who are underrepresented to provide programs like workshops and mentorships evaluation of their pitch deck or their portfolio, those kinds of things, to people who might not otherwise have that chance.
Excellent. I mean, as people have seen, that I have interviewed people who've been part of that program, or a number of the programs. For example, could you explain to me what the virtual exchange is?
Yes. So the virtual exchange was born out of the pandemic. And I'll just do a quick backtrack to get there, which is we started almost 20 years ago as a charity to send women initially and then other marginalized groups to GDC. So that's how we started, was we got passes for them, those, and took care of housing and travel, etc. The pandemic hit in 2020, as we all know, the week before GDC. And the team that was in place at the time came up with a brilliant idea to have a 6-week virtual program for those who had been selected to go to GDC. We are now in our 5th year of the virtual exchange, and that 6-week program in 2024 has 80 grantees who were selected out of over 450 applications, and we have 36 countries represented. So people from all over the world in 3 different cohorts. The cohorts are international scholars. So again, across all 3 cohorts, people who are marginalized or underrepresented, typically in the industry. And the international scholars cohort are people who are either in college or uni or just graduated anywhere in the world. The next cohort we call Velocity. Those are people who have professional experience from another industry and want to get into games and want to take their transferable skills and put them to use in our industry and make great games. We call those 2 our emerging cohorts because they're coming into the video game industry. Our last cohort is called Next Gen Leaders, which is self-explanatory. And so those people have been working in games for 5 or more years and want to take their career to the next level and need some help to do that, whether that's through a mentor or through, they don't know how to start their own studio and they need, a leg up, as it were, to help them get there.
It all sounds absolutely remarkable. And like I said, I've spoken to some people who've come out of those programs, and across the board, they are enthusiastic and passionate and committed and confident because of like the experience that the programs have given them. I mean, it's incalculable. It's great.
Yeah.
One
of my favorite stories. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
One of my favorite stories out of the virtual exchange last year is that the Velocity cohort came together in one of the game jams that was happening around the same time as the virtual exchange. They ended up staying together to finish that game after the virtual exchange. And they have, I think, 2 games out now as alumni of the Velocity cohort and the virtual exchange. So it's a really powerful community. People from each cohort help each other. It's not like only scholars talk to scholars and there's a lot of cross cohort collaboration. And I'm just really proud of the community that we've built.
You absolutely should be. It's the strength in working together is really what I'm about, and that's what I celebrate in the work that you do. So how does really briefly, how do people go about becoming part of this program? I understand it's April is when the applications are accepted.
So the applications open right around GDC, so they're open typically in late March and throughout April for the virtual exchange. So folks who want to be selected in one of those cohorts, we may have other cohorts, but right now those are the 3 cohorts that we have, would apply. There are and will be materials on our website to help people optimize their application. I've heard of people applying multiple years because, for whatever reason they didn't get in and they really want to be a part of our program and get accepted after those multiple applications, which is amazing. There's other ways for people to get involved as well. So we have a mentor program, a mentor matching program. So on our website, there's a link to a form to fill out if you want to mentor our community. And that comes in different ways. Sometimes it's a one-on-one mentor match. Sometimes we have a session during the virtual exchange, or we have an alumni workshop that someone had to drop out, or you as an industry executive are like, I really want to talk about how tech art works, or I really want to talk about how an indie studio gets investment. We will go to that mentor database and look up who has that background and can they help us with that session? Can they help us with reviewing materials? So that mentor database, is a really, really great way to support our community. Of course, we would love donations, and especially connected to Heart of Neon. But we also really value anyone who wants to support our community as a mentor.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time and for bringing this information to possibly a new audience. I definitely encourage everybody watching this to donate generously to the foundation, because the work that they do is fantastic and it builds a stronger community, which is what we all need. Alyssa Wallace, thank you again.
Thanks, Paul, so much. We really appreciate it, and all the best with Heart of Neon.
Okay. So that's a little bit of housekeeping. You now know why there is a thing immediately under saying Heart of Neon hashtag charity. It would be great if you were to give just a lot, whatever you want. But here we are. Let's get on with what we're here for. So we are IndieDev is a series of features, featurettes about individual indie devs. I have no criteria. There is no agenda. I just want to see what indie devs look like and hear a little bit of the stories and what inspires them. To that end, I began this session's interviews by interviewing Megan Fox, the BAFTA award-winning game dev from Glassbottom Games. Enjoy. Oopsie. Hang on. This is not an ideal setup. Keeping it real. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Megan. I make video games for a living, most recently SkateBird. I work out of a barn just west from Seattle, over there in a little tiny town. I was actually born in Anchorage, Alaska, and then I moved to Colorado and then other stuff, and then I ended up here, which is, where I've been for a while and where I made SkateBird. I live in the woods. I mostly keep to myself lately, but I do travel some, like I'm not locked out here. When I do travel, I really prefer road trips. The other thing that gets me out and about, aside from hiking and that kind of thing, is I enjoy going to the movies, which again, COVID changed, but since I live in the middle of nowhere, we actually have a drive-in theater. Like, it's a legit drive-in theater, the kind that's been running since, I don't know, it's old. It's got the classic bumpers and everything, but it's weird. The concessions has like gluten-free stuff. Part of the reason I don't go to restaurants is I have a lot of food allergies, but the concessions at the weird little drive-in totally understands, and all of their stuff is available gluten-free if you want. Like, I can have anything I want. So it's very weirdly fancy, even though it's salt of the earth, little Little Beach town kind of drive-in. So the game I'm most known for is SkateBird, which is about a little bird that tries their best. I wanted to make a game that felt like you and your friends learning to skate together. Not being a pro, you don't know what you're doing. I wanted you to start in a situation where you could barely skateboard. And by the end, I wanted you to be able to do a couple of cool tricks. Now, that being said, the bird thing means there's a lot more jumping, and your a couple of cool tricks scales a little higher. By the end, you're doing essentially pro things. But I wanted the dream to be more what it's like to actually skateboard with your friends. And the goal was to create a game that was Summer Brady and Tony Hawk and Skate, and that basically succeeded. Like, I had bugs, it was indie as hell, it was cheap, and it's imperfect, but like, the point of the art, the point of the scale I'm working at, is we make imperfect art, and that's part of what makes it fun. And it went really well. Like, it was it did well. Like, it did well for us. I was able to pay off my house. Not much more than that. Like, I'm not rich, but I was able to do that. And that kind of change means that future games are easier for me so long as I keep within a very low cost ceiling. So it's me and my partner working on games now, and that's probably what will be forever. And hopefully we can stay stable doing it since, costs are low enough we can do that. If this were a larger studio, the amount of money we made at SkateBird would have been like a drop in the bucket, but thankfully we're tiny. So to us, it was like, oh, wow. My earliest gaming memories are with my grandma, and she played, I helped play all of the King's Quest, all of the Space Quest games. Then the King's Quest games, I started playing those on my own. So that was like my early, but also, so back then there were sharer catalogs, which is this big catalog of like a paragraph and a screenshot, and you would order discs in the mail. And a lot of those were very weird. Something in the adventure games or the shareware, I got the idea that I could do it myself. And there I am. I taught myself to program whenever I was 11, noting that I mean here like ultra basic C crap, like the most advanced game I made would have been a Russian roulette kind of thing. Like, that was basic. Then around 14, I got more heavily into it. That's where I started doing graphics programming. So I was doing like fire demos and little, a Galaga game was the most advanced thing I did. And then fast forward there, another, I don't know however many years, I kind of fell out of it after I left high school, and then got back into it in my early 20s, and that was where it really stuck. I picked back up the game stuff that I had dropped in my teens, and then actually got back into it and contributed to engines, and somewhere in there is whenever I started working on stuff on my own that was something that you might recognize as a game in modern terms, and that led to a first job and so on and so forth. SkateBird was a mess in part because it came from a messy prototype. Skateboarding with your friends is not a precise thing. It's a messy thing. It's a jiggly thing. It doesn't work well. And building it from there, you get this experience. So my thing isn't really the messiness. It's earnestness. It's earnest replication or earnest representation of an ideal, of whatever I'm working towards. That's more what I want to do in the future, which is a bunch of smaller, earnest experiences that are like, you're done in 4 hours, there's another 4 hours of optional stuff if you want, move the hell on. As opposed to in direct conversation with AAA making 600-hour lifestyle games, game as a service, you're never going to play anything else, this is the game for you for the next race. Like, I'm done with those. Even if I could compete with them, I don't want to. I want to make exact opposite of that. But I'm trying to make the games in between that got lost in the transition from pure arcade to giant experiences. AAA didn't used to be 600-hour forever experiences. AAA used to be a concise experience. That's more what I'm trying to make.
I'm Filipe Veiga. I'm from Portugal. I was born in the late 70s. I work as an IT consultant. Porto is the second city in Portugal. It's a nice city. It's a bit rainy. It has a lot of places to visit. Historical city, a medieval neighborhood. I like to read, to walk. I also like to travel. I lived in Brazil for a couple of years where I met my wife. Then I came back to Portugal with the interest in retro and preservation, software preservation. I started my company.
Congratulations. You have driven all the highway.
One of the games that we are going to publish very soon is not a new game. In fact, it's a re-release of a classic game, City Connection, which is an arcade game from the 80s. And in Portugal, there were some guys in the 80s, they made a game for the ZX Spectrum. They tried to get a publisher in the 80s, but they did not have any luck. So the game was kind of lost. And that is one of the games we are going to release. Teknamic is the, let's say, the Portuguese company, but we started in Brazil with Bitnamic. In 2019, I met Marcos Garré. Marcos Garré is a historian. He works on a library, so he's used to write about old stuff. He had in the past, I not quite know the word in English, but he had a store like Blockbusters. He sold games and rented games in the past, so he knows a lot of the video games history in Brazil since the early 80s. He witnessed the coming of the video games in Brazil. So I asked him why we don't go further, why we don't make these games available in the formats, physical and digital, and why we don't ask the veterans to still make games today, because the veterans they have a different perspective of doing things from that times. The restrictions of memory, the restriction of colors, doing programming in assembly, and I think that is a good lesson for the programmers and game creators today. I was an avid player in the 80s. I had those Game & Watch devices. They were my first experience in video games, but they were not interactive in a way that we could change the Game & Watch. I tried as a kid. I opened a Game & Watch and I tried to replace that painted card that the Game & Watch have, but I ruined the Game & Watch. So it was the first time I tried to do something related to games. Then two games that were really amazing for me was Prince of Persia. I played the PC version. It was amazing. And Doom. Clearly, Doom for the PC. I remember the year of 94. The summer of 94 where I played Doom all my holidays, and it was groundbreaking for me. And there are others. I think that all of them make me want to trying to understand how the game was made. I've made a few games. I wrote a few articles about programming and retro programming, but right now, as a publisher, a producer, I have my time more dedicated to producing, to help programmers to make the product. So yeah, I don't think I can program and produce games at the same time. It's very, very hard, but it's also fun. It's also fun because I like to make people connect. For example, those old veteran programmers, they do the program, but sometimes they need a pixel artist for the loading screen, or they need a composer to do the music, and I found them and I make the product viable and possible. That is the mission of our company, is get games from the past, lost or not lost, and make them available in physical editions. I usually say that is we bring the past to the present, so the future generations can still feel or trying to feel the same way we felt on that age.
Hey, so yes, my radio readback, that was Filipe Veiga from Portugal, Teknamic. He's in the chat right now. Thank you very much for participating. So I came to Filipe because I had heard of something else he was involved in, something called street gaming, and I made a point of talking to him more about that topic specifically, and this is what he told me. Circling back to this, the reason I found your name and became interested in interviewing you was this thing called street gaming, which is I think it's a fascinating idea, and it sounds like a massive headache, but incredibly rewarding.
Yes, yes.
A headache in terms of like organizing and making it happen. But can you explain to an audience who's never heard of it what it is?
So, street gaming is a family event. So we have a tent or a place where we gather different kind of video games. So different eras. We have the retro gaming area with all the computers from the 80s, consoles. Some of them obscures. The oldest console we have is the Atari. Then we have a modern area, so the people can play Counter-Strike and all the kind of games. We have a esports area where people can play against each other. We have a VR area, so people can try the VR. So we also have the pop side of it, the cosplay, the Japanese stuff. We have arcades, but the idea is to have a place where the families can go, enter, visit, try, play the games free of charge. So anyone can enter, can play with the arcades, can play with the computer machines, can talk with the influencers. Some of them they were even they didn't even existed when some of the machines we showcase in the street gaming. It's inclusive, so it's inclusive event, and we try to bring 3 or 4 generations into the same place. Usually the visitors are families, so we have the kids, we have the parents, we have the grandparents. Usually it's funny because you can see by the ages, the older ones, they prefer to go play with the arcades machines or with the computers they had in their youth. Then the kids, the adolescents, they go to play with Counter-Strike and the more fancy stuff. It's funny because the very young kids, they are they are fascinated with the old machines, the joystick. It's kind of exotic things, and it's real nice to see the kids trying to explore the joysticks and the controls. They are used to the touch screens. They are the touch generation, but it's very fun, very fun. Mainly because sometimes the grandparents and parents, they bring the kids to show them the games they play in the past, and it's very fun, very rewarding to see the grandfather, then the father and the son playing, and also women's. There are a lot of women's that they play. Most of them they tell that when they were younger, they didn't have the chance to play with the brothers console, so they play whenever was possible, or they were a bit shy telling that they were going to the arcade machines. Now they have the chance to play, so it's very, very rewarding, and we can see what kind of games people prefer for each machine. So, for example, for the Mega Drive, Sonic is always a good choice. For the Nintendo, for the Nintendo, there's a game with the I forgot the game. The game where we shot the ducks with that light gun.
I think it's called Duck Shoot.
Yeah, Duck Shoot. Yeah, that is one of the main attractions because it's very different for the youngers playing with a light gun. So yes, in the arcades we also have some machines that are very popular. We have more modern machines, but we also have Space Invaders, Galaxian. Galaxian is one of the best games to show in a arcade room. And then we have the VR. The VR is also fun because it attracts people of all ages. Most of them they didn't have the chance to play with VR, so in that street gaming they can play. We have the forgot the game. There's two games. One of the lightsabers, the small, yes, it's the most popular. And then we have competitions. We have quizzes. The quizzes are very, very popular, and in the quizzes we do questions, old questions, about new games, old games. And about the organization of Street Game, how did this come possible? Well, it's a long story. I'm a volunteer of the museum. The ZX Load ZX Museum is a museum only dedicated for the ZX computer. ZX computer was the main computer in the 80s, like the Commodore 64 was in the United States in the 80s. So I'm a volunteer of this museum. I'm a friend of the founder of the museum, and this museum start to grow bigger, and to do some networking, and he start to work with influencers that are a bit younger from the 90s, and the idea come naturally, and the João, which is the founder of the museum, joined forces with a TV host that works with retro gaming. Yes, Portuguese TV host. He made a series, and then they decide to do the street game, to join the museum and to join the other side of the gaming, esports, and bring it together into a big tent. And I'm one of the elements of the team. I'm trying to bring another, let's say, another pillar of gaming to the street gaming, which are the indies. So in the last two editions of street gaming, we had a space for the Portuguese indie game devs, so they can show the games to the visitors. So we had 7 studios from all parts of Portugal, from Lisbon, Porto, and they came. We gave them space, tables, internet, the minimum conditions to show them, for them to show the games, and that is something that also very rewarding, because we also want to bring the basis of the industry, the indies. So the solo indies, the small companies, to bring them to the street gaming, so the visitors can see that we also produce games in Portugal. Unfortunately, in Portugal, we didn't have an industry in the 80s or in the 90s. The game dev industry is very young as a professional industry, let's say 10, 15 years. And we are trying to bring the indies also to this blend of gaming, retro gaming, VR, esports, so that the visitors, the families can see what we are doing. And it's very interesting, because in the last edition we saw families coming through the indie area, and they were amazed about finding Portuguese who are doing games. And even for the indies, it's very good, because the indies, in Portugal, they usually go to the big events, like let's say paid events, or to the meetings with the other indies, and they don't have the chance to meet people that don't have any preconceived idea of the game. So yes, it's a very very rewarding experience, trying to build a community, a bigger community. That is one of the main hurdles for the indie in Portugal, is to connect with others, and that's one of the aims of street gaming, is bring everything together to a big tent or a big space, free of charge. That is the main. It's a main idea of street gaming. Anyone can enter, can play, can talk, can participate with the quiz, can take photos with the influencers, with the programmers, with the machines. There's a lot of people that they take photos with the arcade machines, and it's a big like a big family meeting. And that's, I think it's why I'm also a volunteer of street gaming, and I really like this. It's very rewarding. It's a very, very rewarding experience.
You're doing some extraordinary work. I think what you're doing is a huge service to modern audiences, and I'm very excited to have been able to share a bit of your story with a new audience. So you can see, right, why I wanted to share that. It's absolutely remarkable, and I think something like that should be happening everywhere. This whole notion of like all the eras in one place at a family event that's free, where classic games and new indie games are all meeting the audience. It's an unmediated experience. It's in-person experience. It has that kind of energy of an expo without the huge ticket price. I really, really like that idea, and if I can be any part of making that happen in other places, I want to do that, even if it's just sharing the word, right? So there's that. Noticed a couple of other things. One, I'm wearing the same shirt that I wore in both those interviews that I just showed with Alyssa and with Filipe, and the live stream is actually called Video Game Day live stream because I copied some information and didn't update it, so it's not Video Game Day today, obviously, though in Heart of Neon Land, every day is Video Game Day. Anyway, so again, thank you, Filipe. And in that spirit, right? Because one of the things that the We Are Indie Dev campaign, I guess, for want of a better phrase, is exploring different ways for indie devs to share their work in ways that don't require them. They don't have like a lot of high bar in terms of gatekeeping, right? So like when I submit to fan festivals, I'm always having to pay a submission fee, which is non-refundable, and I'm trying to find stories to share about people doing stuff that don't have those kinds of barriers to entry. And another one of those stories, I interviewed a chap called Andrew, who does this thing called INDIEPOCALYPSE, and I will let him tell you about that himself. Let me just go to the VLC, and here we go. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I want to talk to you today about INDIEPOCALYPSE,
yes.
which it seems like a wonderful idea to me, and I want you to explain to everybody what it is.
INDIEPOCALYPSE is basically a monthly anthology of like more alternative, experimental, whatever word you want to use for like bedroom dev experimental indie games. It is like I take a lot of cues from just like small press indie publishing. The easiest analog is not that everyone is familiar, but the idea of like a literary journal that publishes a lot of short stories, something like that, but it's just games. Same idea, but games. A place for people to publish like smaller, more works that fit us. You don't fit inside the more traditional commercial space, and also like publish them and get paid, which is nice and extremely uncommon in that space.
So do you consider yourself a distributor then?
Kind of like it's a weird thing because I feel within games, it feels like there's very little like within the small press space, of people who have like I say that I have like $20 more than the people that I'm supporting, that kind of thing. Whereas I don't have, big publisher money, but I have a little bit more, maybe they do have more money than I do. I don't know.
It's best not to ask, really.
Yes, right.
So I'm deeply curious. Where did this come from? You started out as an indie dev? Is that the case?
Yes. The kind of boilerplate origin that I've nailed down is I was making games, and as I got a little bit better at doing that, I was like, what if I made games? And I did not want to spend like 5 years on a single game, but I also was like, what if I could make money and not work a dreadful retail for my entire life? And the two ideas felt incompatible. And so I was like, well, what if I just kind of brute force into existence a value for smaller games that someone can make in a weekend, or like a month? The kind of things like, plenty of, other art forms are made in these incredibly like condensed time frames, and there's like one of the true curses of art. It's just depending on your perspective is the amount of time and money and like people you pour into it doesn't actually have anything to do with how good it ends up turning out being. So something that somebody makes in a weekend could have more impact and lasting power and be, whatever, quote unquote, good, more than something 100 people spent $100 million working on over 5 years. So it's
exactly. Concord, where are you now? Right. So,
right.
So, I mean, it's like, I had a quick glance around because you've been doing it for a while.
About 5 years in January.
Congratulations.
Thank
and
you.
The first issue, and it has, because it feels like a zine.
Yes.
Aesthetically, and it has that. It's always had that aesthetic. It's like it came out of your head fully formed.
Yes.
It's great.
Yeah, no, it is. I don't want to create more work of overcomplicating the aesthetic, but it is very much like I like a lot of small press indie work just outside of games in general. So I was adapting like, well, it should be like I like zines. So what is this like zine small scale like a self-published culture kind of look like? And then when I went to go grab was I have these little actual physical zines that have all like the little games, like different, like, everyone makes like a different page because conceptually, what's it called? Conceptually, like from the very first issue, I had 10 games per issue. And this was designed to be a very like event focused sort of thing. So I needed to like, well, people can only play one game on my laptop at an event at a time. Well, how are they going to know what the other 9 are? So I was like, well, I'll just make a zine of it, so that people can browse and like they're like little mini gaming magazines. You get a kind of vibe of what the games are. And then I haven't felt the need to change that since.
No, it's very effective. So what are your criteria for making selections for content? Like who do you go with? Do you stay with developers over time, or is it all voluntary, or what? How does this work?
I've had a very strict no repeats rule until this very year, where I'm now allowing if you were in the first year to be in it. So that's like 600 unique developers so far. So like how it works is there's 10 developers in a given issue. One game I newly commissioned, so I obviously reach out to them. The other 9 either come from open submissions, or I'll usually reach out to like 1 or 2 developers and be like, hey, you should submit this game. Occasionally games are newer, but usually like maybe it's like a 10-year-old game that they're not thinking I should, they should submit, of this like, oh yeah, I wasn't thinking of submitting this 10-year-old game to this zine. And I go do that, and they go, okay, sounds good to me, I guess. And then like,
because it's no cost to them, right?
Right. No,
what harm is it?
I just use it's jam pages. So all it is they just like join jam, drop down menu, select game, and then they're done. And that's. Then there's a Google form afterwards, but it's just, worst case scenario, all you need to do is give me your payment information and I can fill out the rest for you. I've done that occasionally. Someone's like, I just don't have time. I say, just give me how I pay you. Then I will make all the other store info that I need. I'll make your zine page. I'll do all that stuff for you. So I'm not looking to like create a bunch of extra work for people,
Well, how long do you spend between, what do you call them? Issues?
Yeah, I call it issues. I guess that's just worth it. It's monthly.
So it's monthly. All right. So you're constantly doing this then?
Yes. I am working at any given point. I'm working on like 3 issues. I am playing games from 1. I am like organizing the next months, and I'm organizing the following month. So right now I'm playing games for February, and I'm compiling December and January. Because I sell physically games in these little. This is the other thing I grabbed. I have these little guys, which are these little like cassette cases with USB sticks inside of them.
Right. Well, I wanted to get into that. We're in danger of like just talking all night. So I'm going to try to keep this brief.
Yes, that's me. But go ahead.
But this is fascinating stuff. So you do showcases, you have a podcast, and in this physical releases of these USBs. There's like a sort of an all fronts. Yeah. I don't know. Is it? I mean, I guess it's promotion, but you like talking about it anyway. I mean, that's the
right.
thing.
Right. It's just it's a misfortune of me is that I get good at something, and then like, oh, I've drilled this down to a perfect thing that I can do. I know how to do it very quickly, and then I'm just like, well, I have more free time. What should I do? I'll start a radio show. I'll start producing physical things, and it's all just like in service of. I want people to like indie games to be more sustainable, but I don't want people to have to like contort themselves into what marketing is, like either to make their game more marketable. I have to be like, I need to do, I guess, what the TikTok thing is or whatever, like have to like shape themselves into like whatever shape like commercialism wants them to be in for their game to be considered like a valid product, so to speak, for it to become like a product, which is like that's annoying. There's such a wide range of expression that like does not fit into that very narrow space of like commercial games. Same with like every medium, how many films fit into like this narrow like blockbuster cinema.
I'm going. If I can make it, I'm going to go to see this experimental film show in Brooklyn next week. 'Cause it's just, I need more of that in my life.
Right.
Really glad that you shared your time today. Can you just quickly let people know if they wanted to submit to Indiepocalypse, what would they need to do?
Oh, it's just indiepocalypse.com/submit. That's all. It's just an itch jam page. You just, if you have an itch account, you just hit the little join, hit the little drop down thing, add your game, and then you're done. Well, I mean, you do have to include your email and make sure there's a playable link, but otherwise, it is painless and it's free, which is a problem with a lot of events and showcases of the like of they're expensive. They cost money.
Thank you again, Andrew, for your time.
No,
I
thank
really
you.
Appreciate all of this. Good luck with the next issue, and if I can find a way to get you back on, I will, because this is just great.
Although, yes, I am generally available, Paul. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, great. That was fun. But the point is well made, I think, in that, opportunities for indie devs to get their stuff to a larger audience without having to pay a fine, right? Like the toll to get onto like certain channels. So if you have seen previous live streams or continue to watch live streams with me further down the road, you will see that this is something that I'm going to be looking out for. This kind of stuff I think is very important, and I definitely think that we should all support it, and where we can take advantage of it. Yeah, that was great. So moving on, I got another couple of featurettes. One with Anima Interactive's Karla Reyes. This is an interview. This is one of the first interviews actually that I recorded, and then it just took a while for us to get media from her so I could finish the video. and then there'll be Nifflas, who is an extraordinary guy doing an extraordinary game. So I'm going to play those back to back, and then I'll be back with a bit more Heart of Neon. So keep it locked.
I'm Karla Reyes. My pronouns are she, her, and I run an indie studio called Anima Interactive, which is focused on creating socially conscious video games. So I currently live in a neighborhood called Echo Park in Los Angeles, but I was born in New York City. So I'm a very stubborn New Yorker that does not have a car in Los Angeles, so I tend to walk, take a bicycle, or longboard most places. My favorite aspect of my neighborhood is I'm very glad to have found a part of Los Angeles that is walkable. I also really enjoy going to the fruit vendor Gilberto because he makes this awesome mango with tajin. So it's really nice to be able to pick that up as well. I feel like I'm in Latin America. Outside of making games, I am deeply passionate about music and I DJ. Yeah, I gig around a little bit here and there. I told you a little bit about the studio and what we're trying to do, tackling a lot of different like social justice issues. And the game that we're currently developing is our debut original project, which is a narrative adventure / survival game about the migrant journey through the Sonoran Desert to cross the US-Mexico border. So it's a very heavy-hitting topic, but it's one that we're really trying to tackle sensitively and authentically. So as an example, we've partnered with an anthropology lab at UCLA that specializes in clandestine migration. We're collaborating with a collective of undocumented immigrant filmmakers. So they're people with lived experience of crossing the border, but they're artists and storytellers in their own right. You know, I'm the child of immigrants and I always wanted to be in a creative space, but the path to get there was a little convoluted. But I'm deeply passionate about video games as like a very multidisciplinary art form and the one that I believe to be the most immersive art form. And part of what I'm trying to build, you know, you mentioned the social impact piece, is that I really believe that video games are a vehicle that can truly shift hearts and minds and foster empathy about specific topics. And that's kind of one aspect of things that I really want to explore through video game development. I guess my first console was the N64, and I had an older brother, and we used to play together. We went through all the first like PlayStation consoles. I played a lot of racing games, so a lot of Need for Speed, Gran Turismo, a lot of GTA as well back in the day, but I used to love just like cruising around in the cars and listening to the GTA radio, as opposed to just like doing some of the more combat related stuff. But yeah, I think that was, you know, when I was really young. And then as I became older, I became really interested in more like JRPG, open world RPG experiences. Zelda was very influential for me. I wear a Triforce necklace. I got really excited by learning how to code, starting when I was in high school. And then I started developing my own little like web games. I started doing kind of programming on web. And then after university, I started teaching myself Unity and got more serious into trying to make my own little like 2D games, as I think a lot of people start that way, making like 2D platformers. And then I found a local community of game developers in London, where I was living at the time, and got to know a little bit more about the scene there. And that was really when I decided to make the shift, and I, you know, quit my 9-to-5 job and started kind of focusing on trying to make games full time. Part of what I'm trying to do with the studio is also give access to opportunities to people who don't have like access to traditional industry infrastructure. And that's the beauty of what you can do at an indie level. You know, we'll just focus on getting like the most talented or most experienced team, but we're trying to do a lot of like mentorship and training within our studio as well. Yeah, so the goal is really to try to foster awareness and empathy around a topic that is often misunderstood. In mainstream media, it's reduced to us versus them. You often hear about the migrant crisis or the statistics around it, but you don't really capture the humanity or the complexity or nuance behind these stories. And it's something that's deeply personal to me and many of the team members. It's actually how much of my family emigrated to the US from Guatemala. And to be able to put yourself in the shoes of somebody that's going through this journey, that's not just a physically arduous journey, but also a psychologically and emotionally arduous one. I truly believe that video games have the ability, right, to really create that immersive space and allow the player to experience what somebody that's going through that would be experiencing.
My name is Nifflas. I live in a town called Gävle in the middle of Sweden. It's a pretty cool town. Like not much happens here, but we have some really cool cafes and the world's largest straw goat. The straw goat is called Gävlebocken. It's as big as a house, and every year it's constructed and put in the center of town. And about half of the years someone burns it down, which is of course illegal, but it has become something of a tradition still. I think I've always wanted a dog because I think it has always been a family thing. I have a dog who's named Hot Dog. She's a little fluffy, really fun, chaotic dog, and I'm making a game about her. Yeah, I'm making a game called The Adventures of Rhythm Doggo, the dog, and the Quest to Beat the Levels, the video game. It's just a working title. And whoever plays the game actually gets transformed into a dog when they start the game, and then they have to beat the game, otherwise they will not be able to become a human again. It's kind of like a rhythm platformer where the levels respond to the music, but unlike most rhythm platformers, the player can also change the music. And that means in most rhythm games you have this thing where the player responds to the music, but in this game the music responds to the player and the player responds to the music, so you get this kind of both-way communication thing, which is really unique for the game. In Rhythm Doggo, I do want the player to feel like a musician. I want them to feel like they are both playing a game and composing music. There's just this joy in operating a little drum machine. If I have these pocket operators, they look like this. I take them where I go out to cafes, and then I compose these drum rhythms, and it's very fun. And it's a very common experience for electronic musicians to have, but I want to share it with the people who play games too. I got into music really early. My mom bought me like a synthesizer when I was only a few years old, and I was playing with it so much. And then I took piano lessons for a while. I've always had a good ear for music, but I've always been really terrible at notation. I think as a teenager again, I was introduced to trackers at some point, this specific type of music software where you input the notes in a vertical interface. It's very text-based, but the moment I tried it, I was hooked. I just wanted to compose more. The music traditionally, even in games, tend to be very linear, very much like either you play a song or you have some layers that you can crossfade in between. But I think at some point I started to think about music as its own possibility space. What if I approach music making the same way as I approach designing a level, where I don't compose one specific set of notes, but I think about a lot of things that could happen. I started to design my own software that would allow me to compose the music in with that kind of way I'm thinking about it. In the 80s, when I was playing the game Wrecking Crew for the Nintendo 8-bit system, and it just had this little level editor built in, and I liked just putting down these ladders and items and playing around with the space. It was kind of mind-blowing for me that I could actually make my own levels in a game. As a teenager, I had the same problem as so many people have. I tried to make games, but I had these massive ideas, games that I could never hope to finish in my entire life. But in the early 20s, I just suddenly, at some point, I was like, wait a minute, what if I make a small game? And since I had that thought, like, let's make a small game, and I made a small game, and I actually finished it. And since then, I think everything was on track, and I've been releasing games steadily ever since. I think I will always make indie games. I don't see an end to it. It's probably something I'm gonna do my entire life. I may not be able to live off it my entire life. Like, the industry is looking pretty tough right now. But even if it's just a hobby, even if I pick up like a half-time job, 4 hours a day doing normal job stuff, I just need to do creative stuff. I need it to live. It's such an essential part of my life to be creating things.
Nifflas, ladies and gentlemen. He's an extraordinary guy, and is I can't remember the name of the game that I just played. The one where you're just rolling down surfaces, and then like this video conversation pops up. He's coming at the video game thing from a completely eccentric angle, and it's a lot of fun. Anyway, like I said, I cast a wide net. I talked to lots of people, and really the criteria is, who I see on social media that day, and then I write it down. And it's sort of that thing, like part of this whole We Are Indie Dev hashtag is born out of a lot of things, but part of it is that, I have to do my own promotion, and I can tell you firsthand that it sucks. It's a lot of energy taken away from the project itself and trying to do this other thing. So if I have to do this promotion, I want to do it serving some kind of benefit. And there's a lot of indie game developers out there who I would like to know more about. Their games are fascinating, or something they're doing is really striking, and I want to know more about where that's coming from. And that's just me, right? And not everybody needs that, but I do. And I think it helps a lot of the time when you're selling something. You're not selling the thing often, you're selling the person. So it's exciting for me to talk to other creative people, and maybe if these creative people get some promotion, some visibility out of that, then that's great, and I've provided a service. Speaking of visibility, the music you're hearing in the background of all these videos is by Tony Longworth. Tony was here a minute ago. Hi, Tony, if you're still there. Tony is a long-standing ally and partner in the project, Heart of Neon. He's provided music for that entire film and more besides. His work features in the Lamasoft, the Jeff Minter Story digital Eclipse release, which from what I understand, NPR radio sort of liked and presented, and it was on some list, so yay. A lot of footage that was shot to make Heart of Neon appeared in the Jeff Minter Story project, because as I was making Heart of Neon, a lot of stuff was getting cut out, right? The stuff that a wider audience wouldn't appreciate, like the details of Jeff's 8-bit career, that kind of thing was getting whittled down to nothing. So I was able to find a home for it in the digital Eclipse thing, and that was great. So enough yakking. So to that end, I'm about to share what is an outtake from Heart of Neon. I presented something, and this is the kind of spirit of the thing that I presented at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. I presented something called Jeff Minter and the Eternal Arcade, which was a couple of outtakes sort of bolted together and polished up to look pretty, about Jeff's relationship with the arcades. So I wanted to create something specifically for this live stream to sort of explain why I'm doing what I'm doing. Jeff's experience. I got turned on to indie dev because of what I learned about Jeff's experience, right? And I think Jeff's work deserves a larger audience, and this We Are Indie Dev is sort of feeding into that. So let's talk about Jeff. This is a piece that I gave it some kind of cute name. What did I call it? No, I can't tell. It's not in there. All right, but so this is about Jeff Minter's early days, and a little bit about the people who admire Jeff and are closest to Jeff, talking about why Jeff's career is important. So, ladies and gentlemen, Heart of Neon.
Indie dev is important because they're the wellspring of creativity. That's where it comes from. It doesn't come from AAA. That extremely rapid evolution of ideas is always going to come from that space. From game developers like Jeff Minter.
I want my games to evoke the 1980s arcade room. You know that feeling when you walk in and there's just all these sounds going off all around you? That's what I want to sound like playing Grid Runner, because it's supposed to be an evocation of an arcade game that never existed. Video games are pretty much all I've ever done. I've been an enthusiast ever since they first became available. The stuff I do, I mean, it's quite fair to call it neo-retro, because it takes a lot of the ethos and design philosophy from retro games. The kind of games I design are not really games full of narrative. They're not telling a story as such. It's all about feeling.
You know, it was like in the mid-2000s when I got really into them. I think it was right before Space Draft. You know, that was something that probably landed awkwardly in that kind of period where it was like the era of literalist, like realist sort of games like Halo, BioShock, Gears of War, Grand Theft Auto, and Modern Warfare.
They're just games that you would find that have a 3D aspect to it, that are also very literal. They're representations of real things, or they're representations of a world that you would understand, or is maybe a little bit hackneyed in some ways. Whereas like what Jeff made is a unique thing that you could look at and go, it's a Jeff Minter game.
I don't want reality. I want something that I can't experience anywhere else, and I think Jeff has always had that approach as well. It's not about perfect reproduction, it's not about realism, it's about what can you do that takes a person on this fantastic voyage. I mean, Jeff is special.
Because he is not an ordinary guy. I mean, that's just the truth of it. He likes to be thought of as an ordinary guy, but he's not. People are drawn to Jeff Minter in a strange kind of way because he is, I think, a digital artist as opposed to just technologist.
It's just the market doesn't really like these games with personality in this way. You can't make people play this stuff. You can't get people to understand that that weird looking thing is actually just doing something fucking unique and special, you know?
That's something that I think fans gravitate toward. But it's always been a struggle to bring the idea of the artfulness of games to a mainstream audience.
What developers can learn from Jeff. You can have a lifelong career in this industry doing what you love. But you're going to have to persist if that's what you want.
I mean, he's been doing it for 35 years, staying in this industry that chews people up and spits them out. So he's out on his kind of aim because he just won't give this up.
When I was in school, I dabbled in lots of various things. I got a skateboard and I was a skater for a while, really enjoyed that. But nothing really caught hold of me the way that programming did. I mean, it was just such a powerful thing. I just wanted to do it all the time. I wasn't even aware of the link between computers and video games until I walked into this room one day in college, and there was one guy sat down the end with this weird thing which looked like a telly on top of a typewriter keyboard and appeared to be playing some kind of crude game on it. I was a bit curious, went over and asked him where did that game come from. He said he types it in. That was the moment that completely changed my life. This idea that a game could exist by you typing it into this weird machine was like, what the hell is that? How the hell do you do that? I want to find out more about that. And it all kind of grew from there, really. I really enjoyed the act of programming. I thought that I'd finally found something that I actually had some kind of genuine aptitude for. It had maths in it, but it wasn't terribly complicated maths. It had this logical stuff going on, but it was also creative, it was also constructive. You could use this one side of things, this logical side of things, to build things in the creative side of things. And it brought these two sides together in a way which I found incredibly satisfying. The thing is, the Commodore PET back then, it was quite expensive. And I didn't come from a rich family. There's no way that our family could have afforded a computer, and there's no way I individually could afford a computer. I only had pocket money at the time, didn't have a job. And then this item came on the news and showed Clive Sinclair demonstrating the prototype of the ZX80 in some school somewhere. And the idea of actually having your own computer at home was just like unbelievable. I really, really, really wanted that ZX80. And so eventually got the money together and ordered it. When I started my career, it was like I was driving an ox cart. Where I am now, it's like I'm the captain of the Starship Enterprise. That's the amount of technological progress that's gone on between where we originated and where we are now. It's insane.
For me, it was the beginning of a completely new medium. Think about it, before then, the only way you were going to get stuff on TV was having it piped over the airways. But then suddenly, you could change what was happening in real time on the screen. For us, who were teenagers at the time, it was profound.
The availability of these machines cheap is what really kick-started the software industry. That's when other people started having these machines. They wanted software for them, and we used to go up to the ZX micro fairs, and there would be people there like Quicksilver and people like that actually selling cassettes. And in fact, that's how I got started, really. I went up to a ZX micro fair. I had some tapes with some of my simple games I'd done on them. And I got talking to this one guy on the stand for a company called DK-Tronics. They did memory boards, and they wanted to get into selling some software. And I showed them some stuff, and they said, well, perhaps we could sell it. And I said, that's fantastic. And so I ended up doing some ZX81 programs for them. When we first started out, I was doing what everybody else was doing, just copying arcade games. I did, I should say this because I did a version of Centipede. But at that time, I'd never actually played Centipede, the arcade game, so I just took the idea of the Centipede, but it didn't actually have the same stuff. You couldn't move the ship up and down, you could only move left and right. It's a bit like Space Invaders across the Centipede, really. It's quite simple. That was the first time I ever had any indication of fame. I was going up to, I think it was an Earl's Court show, and I was in the queue outside waiting to go in. And there were some lads in front of me, and they were talking about what games they were playing on their ZX81. And so, I've been playing DK-Tronics Centipede. I was like, what? You've been playing DK-Tronics Centipede? He said, yeah, I really like it. You really like it? He said, I said, yeah, I made that. He said, you must be Jeff Minter. I was like, in the old days, the idea of magic was that people could use spells and incantations to just create stuff out of nothing. And we are the actual true magicians. By speaking these words of power to machines, we can actually create stuff. We can put stuff out there in the world which is something which other people can have and use. And it's, to me, the real joy is in being able to do that, to be able to get stuff out of here and actually make it exist just by speaking this weird language is fantastic.
You know, we can all learn something from that. You know what I mean? That if you're persistent and you're focused and you care enough, you can make good things. You know, I think you can look at Jeff. You can look at the fact that he's survived without going insane, because this business is horrible at times. And to be that passionate, you know, he's probably cares more about it now than he's ever has. You know what I mean? And he's better at it. Constant evolution, which is, you know, it's amazing. I'm just mad skills for that.
You know, it's really Jeff is still the hero of the bedroom coder. The proof that, you know, if you've got a vision, if you've got a really strong idea of what you want to do, and you've got a really strong vision for what you want to create, and you're prepared to say, look, screw everybody else. I'm not going to do what everybody else wants to do. I'm not going to toe the line. I'm not just going to be Mr. Corporate in a cube, in a suit somewhere. Hey, this might work. Hey, this might not work. But I'm going to try, and I'm just going to keep plugging away at it and see what happens and see what sticks.
If you love what you're doing, you can do it for the whole of your life, the whole of your working life. Now, what kind of artist do you want to be? You know, do you want to be pop? If you want to be pop, then you're going to have to prepare to write songs or perform songs, yeah, if you're using the pop analogy, that weren't written by you, that you wouldn't ordinarily relate to. Or do you want to be authentic? In which case, you're going to have to persist if that's what you want. And if you work on your craft and you work on it long enough that you create your voice. Because think about art. Picasso didn't come up with Cubism in his first 5 years or 10 years or whatever. He went through all of the classical stuff. He was very traditional. It's only when he completely got the hang of everything that he started creating his own voice. And so if you want a voice like Jeff's, that's the journey you got to take. That's the journey of an artist.
Journey of an artist. Yeah, I mean, so there you go. That's a little bit of like what I mean. Heart of Neon isn't that now, and you can see that was rough. There's some dodgy edits, and the picture isn't finished, so it's an outtake. But that it is the spirit, 100% of what the film's about. So I in my initial first fumblings trying to construct some kind of distribution and outreach campaign for the film, I was talking to Gareth Noyce, who was in the film there. Talking about, well, why don't they don't seem to teach video game history in school? Isn't there? Surely there's value in Jeff's story. And Gareth was very clear to me when he said Jeff's story is unrepeatable because the circumstances that precipitated Jeff's rise don't exist now. And he's right. But I think he makes the larger point in the clip itself is that, you know, because even though the details of Jeff's stories are unrepeatable, that the point is that Jeff never gave up. And he believed in what he was doing. And maybe arguably sort of cornered himself into doing something that he couldn't stop doing. So, but isn't that sort of rather getting stuck doing something that you like doing than get stuck doing something you don't like doing, right? So, so granted, Jeff's story isn't like a template, right? He's not some kind of visionary guru. But he's a good example of what it takes to succeed, right? On his own terms. Well, for one thing, pick your own terms, right? So anyway, I'm not going to belabor it. There's no secret formula in the Heart of Neon story. The Heart of Neon story is really about commitment to that, commitment to the video game experience, and that's really what I'm celebrating. And hashtag we are IndieDev. Speaking of which, so let's get back to it. I got a couple more featurettes coming up, and I'll just let them introduce themselves. But Amber Stacey is next up. Enjoy. Wait, where's my player? Oh, there we go. Go.
Hi, I'm Amber Stacey. I am the creative director of Studio Tinkerhaus in Melbourne, Victoria, and I am a stop motion animator, an academic, and a needle felting artist. I was born in a tiny little bush town called Wodonga in Victoria, Australia. However, I very quickly moved to WA in Western Australia, and I grew up in the country. I've spent most of my life in Perth, growing up in the bush. The thing I love most about Perth is probably the beaches. It's very relaxing. It's a great place to take the dog down for a walk. I have a Labrador. His name is Banjo. He used to earn money on YouTube a long time ago, but he's pretty much an old man now. There are many wonderful people in my life, but the most important of all would have to be my partner, Denise, of 17 years. And I have a 2-year-old, Oscar. He pretty much just thinks he's Lightning McQueen. So I live, breathe, eat, sleep, talk, all things cars, every day, all day. It's my life at the moment. The game I am currently developing is a 2.5D puzzle adventure platformer called Bones Wandering Soul. It is the story of a small skeleton who is disconnected from his coffin. The player's objective is to help Bones find his way back to his coffin through undertaking a variety of missions whilst trying to blend into the real world, kind of in order to reveal clues about his past. Earlier this year, I was fortunate to receive funding from Screen Australia's Emerging Game Makers Fund to explore this idea of the game. So this has really allowed me to assemble a small indie team and experiment with the concept. For us, it's been a huge achievement seeing this concept come to life, which we're very excited to explore further. I think we all have a story to tell from COVID in 2020. And this story is a result of my personal journey through COVID. It emerged unexpectedly. It popped into my head just before I was to begin a new semester of my master's. And I just woke up one morning with this little dead guy running around my head. And I just felt like the world was very broken during that time. And it still feels very broken, to be honest, 4 years later. So I feel like this idea of acceptance and inclusion and really learning to accept ourselves and our differences is very important to share, and accepting one another for our individuality and who we are. I truly stumbled into indie development and never had any specific goals of doing it. I've spent the majority of my life in theatre and dance with a life goal of studying musical theatre, and I fell down a pathway of graphic design and motion graphics. And over a decade, I spent my time working in a bunch of different ad agencies, small boutique studios, digital agencies, and event companies. And it wasn't until I actually began lecturing in digital design and media that I realized how incredibly stagnant my creative life had become. And I was starting to feel really flat and just uninspired by everything. And I just thought, if not now, when? So I enrolled into MAGI, which is the Masters of Animation, Game Design, Interactivity at RMIT University in Melbourne, which kind of opened this whole new world to me. Growing up, I could only really play games visiting my friends' homes, which was a bunch of things like Super Mario Brothers, WWE Wrestling, Sonic, Crash Bandicoot. I grew up with this understanding that games was made by very intelligent boys that did computer science. It wasn't really a thing back in the day to see girls making games and being taught that game dev was so much more than just programming. For me, game development is very similar to theatre, and since exploring this career pathway, I have learnt that there seems to be a whole underground of theatre people now working in game development, which is incredibly inspiring and encouraging. The studio that I founded earlier this year, Studio Tinkerhaus, is a place, a creative hub, my creative house as such, for both animation and games. Bones is going to be a long slog. It's going to be a big journey, and it's definitely a marathon, not a sprint with that one. But in the meantime, I'll definitely be working on animations, game jams. There is a second game that I am brainstorming at the moment, which is going to be heavily influenced by my life story. So I'm really kind of keen to explore that further. And for me, it is a chance to explore or create an experience that combines My love of theatre with the lighting, the set design, materials, storytelling, music, and audience engagement with interesting characters and animation all just bundled into this giant interactive narrative.
I'm Herb Gilliland. I'm a scientist and artist from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I started Lost Astronaut Studios in 2006. I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh is known for robotics and Carnegie Mellon and Pitt and some other universities. I recently moved to a neighboring city called New Kensington, Pennsylvania. And the reason I moved here is because the housing prices are affordable and sort of stuck in the 1990s. So I got a lot more than I could get in Pittsburgh, but could still remain a part of the community here. It's 25 minutes from the city center, so I get a little bit of that, but it's closer to farmland, and we weren't sure if we wanted to get a farm or if we wanted to just find a house, and this was a great house, and I like the idea of maybe one day going further out and finding a farm, but we'll see. I'm married without kids. I have a lot of cats. Biggie! I spend a lot of time doing tabletop role-playing games. I paint miniatures. That's a very new hobby. I 3D print things. I also write novels on the side.
Looking for a job, I found myself in deep space. I was going to be an asteroid miner. I didn't know the hazards.
Apolune 2 is a survival roguelike that's funny and designed to be frustrating, but not overly frustrating. Basically, the concept is that you're tethered to a space station, and you and up to 8 people can actually play simultaneously, and you sort of tug of war this space station around the screen, and it's basically an asteroids game. Asteroids come in, you can stop them and mine them, and then break them down, and then sell them and buy things and upgrade your station and yourself, and your team kind of works together or not, depending on how experienced they are at doing that, and you could die at any time. I was an only child. I didn't have a lot of playmates, and when I had to play alone, I played with Matchbox cars, and I gave them personalities similar to what they did for the Transformers, but these didn't transform. There were cars that had writing on them like Nitro, and that became his name, that kind of thing. And I would act out these interactive movies where, there would be stunt driving and things that are going on, and they would be talking, and there would be nemesis and groups and different plot lines that I was making up, in the corner of the living room. And I think that tendency towards wanting to play with my toys that way, to create stories around these toys, was just from the very beginning that I wanted to make my own games. The first game that I played that I ever have a really huge connection to is the Infocom game Planetfall. And in that game, that towards the end, you lose a companion. He sacrifices himself for you, and he's the only companion you have marooned on a planet. So you're alone when he dies, and you're alone before you meet him. So he's this moment in that experience, and I don't think I'll ever forget that. And just being inspired by that game to go and make my own text games and then eventually graphical games. In 1991, I wrote my first text-based online multiplayer game, and it went kind of viral for a little while in the 90s, and part of it at least became a part of other people's work, and it's still being used today. But after that, I went to school, and I needed to make money, so I became a web developer. And then in 2005-06, I decided, I miss doing graphics and video games. I need to get back to that. And so I challenged myself, and I became a graphics programmer, and then founded Lost Astronaut on the side, thinking I would write a game quickly in like 6 months. I worked on my first game for like 7 years, and it never got published. Well, there haven't been that many successes over 20 years. And I think that there's a pursuit of success that is still a hunger. Okay. And success for me is very modest. And I'm hoping my next game will do that. And when I'm either unable to work due to eyesight or just being too distracted by other things, you know, there are times that I've taken a break over the 20 years. But right now I'm fully engaged in my next project, and until that's completed or I hope to complete it. You don't always complete projects, but this particular one I'm keeping scaled back so that I can complete it. And I've learned a lot of lessons over the years, but I'm kind of ready to pivot to maybe tabletop or something else. But it's been something I've been doing since I was 14 years old. I'm almost 50 now, not quite yet, but soon. And you know, it's something I've done every single day, is program computers and try to make games and fun things, just for my own amusement, if no one else.
It was Herb. Yeah, it's Herb is like exactly the kind of solo dev I thought I'd be talking to exclusively, because I thought that Jeff, in my mind, I thought that Jeff Minter actually did represent what Indiedev was, and he it's just one tiny aspect of it. You know, when I started this campaign, when I sort of pitched it to Alyssa, I jokingly said, you know, Jeff Minter's stories in Indiedev is unique, and so are the stories of every Indiedev, and it turns out it's absolutely true. Case in point is the next one. We're running a little bit late, but that's fine. I want to get everything in here, so let me just check that I'm not wrong. Nope, right. So, Ayla Derrick, she was in the chat earlier. Ayla is the founder, if not a founder, if not the founder of SkateBird Games, and came upon that organization on LinkedIn. Oh, I'll just let Ayla tell the story. So what you're going to see is the feature, the profile about Ayla and SkateBird Games, and then there'll be a supplemental video. I did a follow-up. Basically, there was something that particularly drew my attention to what Ayla's doing, and she talks about that at length. So I'm going to just play both back to back, and then we'll wrap this up with one more profile. Hey, Ayla, you're here. Yay! So you're up, and we're just going to play both those videos back to back. Starting, making sure that I've got the right video. Fingers crossed. Okay. Ayla Derrick.
I am Ayla Derrick, and I'm 27 from San Diego, California. I was born in Florida, South Florida. Eventually, I moved to Colorado, and then decided I hated winter after about 10 years and moved to San Diego to get some more sun and some more beach. San Diego is amazing. I live right downtown in a neighborhood called Gaslamp, and that's pretty much the center of town. It has a lot of food, a lot of bars, a lot of clubs. I am way more interested in the food. I have a cat. His name is Naruto. He did come with that name from the shelter. I have a partner. His name is Chris. We've been together for over 4 years now. Chris and I enjoy playing games. We have entirely opposite tastes in games, so really what ends up happening is I watch him play the games that I won't play, like Deadlock or Gears of War, so that I can stay up to date with the new happenings in games without actually having to do the work. He's definitely supported my entire career here in games.
It's not just about the harvest, it's about the vibes you create along the way.
So my studio, SkateBird Games, is creating our first title called Plantasia, which is a cozy idle gardening game where you grow plants in space in order to revitalize barren planets down below. But something cool about Plantasia is it rides off of the innovation created by the game Rusty's Retirement, where the game itself sits on the bottom third of your computer screen and idles away there so that you can continue working or studying or watching videos or doing whatever on the top half of your screen, the top 2/3 of your screen. So it's really meant to have you be able to work and play at the same time, and really be able to come down to the game when you are truly idle, when you really need a break, and click a few buttons, grow a few plants, and then go back to what you were working on before. Plantasia is supposed to be an extension of your desktop aesthetic. So we all have gotten really excited about building really pretty PCs and having really pretty keyboards and playmats and really nice, computer background screens. And so Plantasia is meant to extend that onto your actual computer. We are hoping that you'll be able to customize your game, have that cozy aspect of decoration, and have the decorations in your orbital greenhouse lab in the game match what your actual desktop aesthetic looks like. So we hope that if you walk away from the game will still be a part of you and a part of your life on the computer, because it is aesthetically matching everything else that is going on your workspace. The whole point of our project with Plantasia was just supposed to be a portfolio project, something that we did as all juniors in the industry to help us find jobs, since jobs are basically impossible for juniors to find right now. Obviously, with our success on LinkedIn and elsewhere, we hope that this game will make us a little bit of money, but really the main focus remains a portfolio project to up our skills and to show the industry that we as juniors are capable of making something that is worthy of playing. And so our goal is that people will see this game, see the innovation that takes place within it, see the quality and the talent, and recognize us as worthy members of the industry, and hopefully either pay us money to continue working on Plantasia or pay us money to work on other games. About a year ago, I was actually in education. I was an English teacher, and I have been a casual gamer. I'm not a hardcore gamer. I like just playing games when I have time, and I've been doing that my whole life. But I was tired of what I was doing in education, and I still felt like I hadn't figured out what I was really supposed to do in life. And this was around the same time that the SAG-AFTRA strikes were happening in Hollywood. And so I was talking to some friends, and I just said, oh man, I hope they don't stop writing games like how they've stopped writing the movies. And that's when it kind of clicked in my head that, oh, someone actually writes games, and me with an English degree, I also write. Maybe I can do that. I looked it up. Narrative design, game writing was a thing, and that was an instant sell for me. I instantly quit my job and left the education industry and joined the game industry. I quickly realized that finding a job in this market currently would be next to impossible. And, as my education grew in game design, SkateBird Games just kind of formed out of nowhere with some friends. Being juniors in the industry, we really had to kind of rally around some ideals and some mission statements in order to make our game and our teamwork successful. And what we settled on are 3 studio pillars of communication, education, and passion. Communication is just really big deal for me personally. I overly communicate with everyone in my life. And because we are a remote team across a bunch of time zones, it's important for us to know what's happening in everyone else's life. If someone can't make a meeting, hey, let us know, and how can we support you in that? But also, I am a prior teacher, so education is huge for me, again, in my general life. But also, we are all juniors, so we are all learning all the time. And keeping that focus on education so that we are not just making a game because based on what we already know, we are making a game and learning how to make the game at the same time. And then finally, passion. We're not doing this for money. We are all volunteers at SkateBird. No one is getting paid, and hopefully we can pay ourselves back eventually. But because we're not getting paid, something else has to drive us, and that's the passion for the game, the project that we are doing. Everyone really enjoys the game we're making, whether it's because it's a game that they would make themselves, or it's just a genre that they like, or it's just the fact that we really enjoy our team and like working with each other. Passion really kind of solidifies all of us together, and we use these 3 pillars to create a functioning and successful team.
Ayla, how you doing? Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you participating in this. I came to find out about you via LinkedIn, like I find out about a lot of people. And the thing that struck me about you and your group, SkateBird Games, is that you have a philosophy, which is one of the things I think is very cool. Can you just quickly explain to us what SkateBird Games is and what you're doing right now?
Cave Bear Games is a studio by and for juniors in the game industry. So people who have not really yet broken into the industry and managed to find a paying job, or people who have successfully broken in but are only 1 or 2 years into their professional career. Is that all the question?
I think so. I mean, it's entirely voluntary, right?
Yes, Cave Bear Games is a volunteer studio. So we don't have any funding. We don't have any investors. We don't have a publisher. We haven't done any crowdsourcing. We are all just people who want to make a game, and we're tired of waiting for a studio to let us make a game. We wanted to make it now. And so we came together to make Plantasia, and now we're a team of 14 or 15, all making a game of all juniors.
And this has all happened fairly rapidly, from my understanding. It's when is the company formed again?
Cave Bear Games was founded in April of 2024, and now it's the end of November. So yeah, it's only been 7 or 8 months.
And it's working out. That's the thing. You are working remotely, and however, I mean, it's exciting to see it happen. And because I tried this kind of thing a long time ago, and I fumbled the ball. I just did not have the skills, the leadership skills. So props to you, because it's not easy. You say it like it's just, this is inevitable, and that's great. And sometimes it is that. Sometimes like acting like this is going to happen anyway gets you through the harder times. But there's something about it. So you've sort of like, you've created this organization, you're doing a thing, you have stuff to show for it now, and you've sort of become a beacon, is what I understand. Can you you've joined forces with people. Can you explain to me how that happened and what that is now?
Yeah, we got really lucky. When we first formed Cave Bear in April, we put out a LinkedIn post, a company page LinkedIn post, and that went viral. People really enjoyed the fact that we were a studio by and for juniors in the industry. I guess we were echoing some sentiment that a lot of people in the industry were feeling. And we continued to grow after that viral post, and now we have over 25,000 followers on LinkedIn. And we learned a couple of things from that. One, we learned that there were a lot of other indie studios who were doing the same thing we were doing, volunteer work. And the second thing we realized was, because of the job market and the non-existent jobs, there were a lot of people who just wanted to make games. And if they had to volunteer at an indie studio to do that, they were totally okay with doing that. So out of those two pieces of knowledge, we created the Cave Bear Games Partner Studio program. And now, after 5 or so months, we have over 70 other indie studios as part of that partner program. So all of these studios have in common, they're all pre-seed indies. So they have no investors, no publishers, no funding, and they're all volunteer basis. And they use our Discord to advertise their open positions to a very dense population of other volunteers. So we have over 2,600 people in our Discord, and over 2,100 of those people have marked themselves as wanting to volunteer at an indie studio. So they are able to really draw and recruit from that very dense population of passionate people. We also, the ethos of the partner program is that I believe there's room in the industry for all of us. So I want us to support each other instead of compete, so that more of us can succeed. Obviously, not every studio is going to succeed. That's just not how economy works. But hopefully more of us can, because we have the support and the experience and the shared knowledge of everyone around us. We have, studios that are like us, like Cave Bear. They're brand new people, juniors, brand new first-time founders. But we also have, 3X founders. We have AAA, ex-AAA employee founders. We have 20-plus year veteran, game design veteran founders. So we have a large variety of experience that people can share and talk about and ask questions and learn from each other, to create a very supporting and educational, because I'm very big on educational environment for these studios to learn and grow and succeed.
No, it sounds like a really nurturing community, which I believe is important. That's one of the things that drew me to Cave Bear is this notion of community supporting each other, and not financially, but with spirit and education, and sharing knowledge. It sounds like a very eclectic group of developers that are under this umbrella. do you vet these people, right? You don't just take anybody, presumably. You have some criteria.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of scams that go around, unfortunately. And so I personally meet with every single founder who applies to the program because you have to apply. But it is, somewhat of an easy program to join. You just have to be a team of at least 2 people. At least right now, that could change in the future. And you have to be a completely volunteer, so you can't have any funding or publishing. You can be privately fed, if you yourself have a lot of money and are able to pay yourself that way or whatever. But you have to be a fully volunteer studio. No one is actually allowed to be paid. Most, if not all of our studios have some sort of rev share agreement in place, if their games do succeed and do end up making money. So, hopefully some money will be made out of this eventually, but salaries are not being paid. And paid positions are not allowed to be advertised in our Discord. We feel that there's a lot of places to advertise paid positions, from LinkedIn to the different, Hitmarker, different job sites, Indeed. And we wanted to provide a safe space for people who were just trying to volunteer. We didn't want to try to compete with other places. Eventually, obviously, the hope is that some of these partner studios will succeed and will get funding and will get money. And when that happens, they'll be able to graduate from the program and maybe go up to a different tier. We don't have any of those people yet. And they'll be able to start, actually paying their people. And that is the end goal, right? That is what the whole point is. But until they get to that point, we're here to support them in whatever way that we can.
Any words for advice for somebody who's just starting out as an indie dev? I mean, you were not that long ago. You were that person yourself. Is there what would be your key piece of advice for somebody starting out?
For someone who's just starting out in the games industry, my advice is to do. That's something I learned really, really quickly, is you can't kind of waffle around and wait for someone to take interest in you. You have to start working in whatever way you can. And if that's doing solo projects to boost your portfolio, that's totally fine. Do whatever works for you. But what I chose to do, and what a lot of other people chose to do, is to join a team, to learn about how a studio environment works, to learn how to work on a team and communicate with different disciplines in the game industry, and eventually get a published game out of it. Because you see a lot of the requirements on these entry-level jobs is having these team collaboration skills, the studio environment skills, and a published game. But how are you supposed to do that if you are an entry-level applicant? So we try to, provide the resources for people to actually check those boxes. And whether you're, founding a studio because there's no other choice right now and you just want to make a game, or you are trying to join an indie studio, the whole thing is to just get something done, have something, and then iterate on top of it, and continue to improve to eventually get a finished product that people can play.
And I celebrate all of that. I think the mission is an excellent example of the community stepping up to fill a need in the community. So how do people get in touch if they want to be involved or have a group that maybe want to be involved? How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so if you are an indie studio who might want to join the program, check out our website, cavebeargames.com, and then click the little Partner Studios tab. There you can learn about the different things that we do. You can see all of the other studios that are currently involved, and then you can also apply. And once you apply, I personally look at your application, reach out to you personally, we'll meet, talk about it, and then hopefully you will get accepted. Again, it's pretty easy as long as you meet those 2 requirements. If you are someone who wants to volunteer and find a project, join our Discord. And again, you can find that on our website, or you can find it on LinkedIn, or just do a Google search for Cave Bear Games Discord. And there you'll be able to choose the role of opportunity role and choose to volunteer. And then you'll be able to check out our opportunities channel, where all of those 70 plus indie partner studios post their open applications. Browse through those, apply to them, and eventually, get an interview and hopefully join a team pretty soon.
That sounds amazing. Ayla, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate the sharing.
Thank you so
good
much.
luck with everything going ahead.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah, that's so you can see why I included Cave Bear. I mean, I think that's an extraordinary extraordinary idea. I mean, I've spent as much time as many of you have on LinkedIn, and you see these posts about entry-level positions that have just ridiculous criteria. They don't understand what entry level is. Well, it's entry level for them, right?
So Cave Bear's a novel solution to an industry problem, and it leans into the things that I value, which is commitment, community, and raising each other up. Right. That's really is what I'm about. So thank you, Ayla, for sharing all that stuff. You can this is your audience. It's a very good idea. I think it speaks for itself. So I am almost to time. That's not bad, because the first one was like way over. Last year was exactly right. So this one, I got one more video to show, but please stick around. Don't quit. I'll come back after this video plays to say cheerio. But this is I did an interview with Greg Lee. So I asked around, right? I got some friends in the business, and the question was, who would you recommend I talk to who's an indie dev? And I was speaking to Gary Penn, who was in the film, ex-journalist and now co-owner, I believe, of Denki. He said I should talk to this guy, Greg Lee, and armed only with that information, I reached out and we talked, and this is what came of it. And his story is it's a doozy. Ladies and gentlemen, Greg Lee. Where's my player? And go.
My name is Greg Lee, and I own a small video game studio based in Dundee called Team Terrible. I'm originally from Northern Ireland. I came over here because I always loved video games, and Dundee has this like really rich background of a lot of games made there. Living in Dundee, you're on the footsteps of like the Highlands in Scotland. Where I come from back in Ireland is in the middle of nowhere in the countryside. Dundee's a little bit bigger than the village that I grew up in, but I still have this access to like one of the most beautiful countries in the world right outside my door. I love living on the coast. I love seafood. It's just somewhere that felt very much like Ireland outside Ireland. Me and my partner Louise, whenever it's good weather, we love going outside and experiencing some of nature, going out, meeting friends. We love traveling, but a big thing that we really enjoy doing is just creative activities together. My background's art, but Louise recently has got into a whole load of like various hobbies. We've even joked that we're going to start to make furniture together because she loves all the sort of weaving stuff and I've got into woodworking. So we like doing things that involve each other and create things. Baby in Yellow is a Lovecraftian babysitting game where you take the place of one of a few different babysitters to have to come and look after this demonic baby, I guess. One of my favorite things about the game is the fact that it's the monster and the thing you're looking after are the same thing. So normally in horror games you have like the person you're looking after being one person and the monster chasing you, whereas our game's a bit more like you're holding a live grenade. The thing that you're caring for is also the thing that's trying to kill you, and I think that adds an extra sort of element to the game. The original release was a game jam, which we made in like a very, very short period of time that went viral. Game jams are making a game in a really, really short period of time. So you normally have anywhere between 48 hours to a week, although they can be longer and shorter than that. Normally you get a theme and you have to make a game according to that theme. And they're really, really fun and very stressful at times, but they get you to experience the entire development of a game cycle, which could take 3 or 4 years in one weekend, which I think is invaluable. And the Baby in Yellow was made in one of these game jams. It was the Game Maker's Toolkit game jam. A friend of ours had just had a kid, and it was kind of a way to sort of poke a little bit of fun at him. And when working on it, we started tying in some horror elements to it, and the game kind of came together. And by the end of the jam, we knew we had something special, even though it was very rough around the edges, because in a game jam, it's very like rapid prototyping. You can't be too precious. You have to really find the fun very quickly, and we got very lucky with the Baby in Yellow. So we don't consider the game finished yet. We had a story to tell, but we didn't have the capacity to tell it in one go to the quality we wanted to. So over time, we started like slowly adding to that story and building on it and building on it. And next year in 2025, we hope it'll be the final game actually done. Because as much as I love it, I've been working on it for quite a while now, and I want to move on to other things. We were working at Rockstar at the time, which is obviously a very prestigious company that pays very well and looks after the employees. So the thoughts of like quitting that to go and work somewhere else was scary. But our game blew up so quickly that whenever we monetized it, we were making as much as we were in our jobs. So that let us quit our jobs pretty safely. Whenever the PS2 was out, I must have been 14 or 15, I think. And it was Time Splitters, and they added a map editor. And I remember me and a bunch of friends, and we had a link cable, so we had 2 PlayStations attached together, so you could have up to 8 people playing at the same time. And I spent most of my weekends coming up with game modes for them. I mean, I didn't realize this at the time, but that's game design, that's game development. You know, obviously it wasn't enforced by the game, but we were all willing to play by the rules, like you would a board game. And it wasn't for years later that I look back at that and go like, wow, I was the only one doing that. Like with my group of friends, everyone was engaging with it, but I guess that was like the first thing that I probably designed as a game and shared with people, and that was really transformative to me because I got to experience something I created with other people, and that's one of the reasons why I love what I do. I didn't really have a lot of direction in life. I loved art, I loved creating things, but I just didn't know what to do. And like a random guy was like, I'm going to Scotland to make video games. And I was like, excuse me? That sounds incredible. And I just jumped on it and came over. But it was very much that on a whim of, I wasn't doing anything else. I wanted to do something meaningful and creative. And this was an opportunity that I genuinely didn't know existed. I didn't know you could go and make video games. I thought it was like something only people in, you know, Silicon Valley do. I didn't think it was something that I could do. Yeah, Team Terrible, I guess on the surface comes across as maybe we know exactly what we're doing and stuff, but at the end of the day, game development's a chaotic environment to live in. It's that thing of, you know, no matter how good it's going, it's like the duck on the surface of the water looking so calm, and underneath is the little legs going like crazy. We're very much like that. The goal has always been like, make our own stuff. I always refer to it as like creative independence. And whenever I worked in like some other studios, I was making someone else's games, and that just didn't appeal to me. I wanted to make my games, and now I get to do that. And as far as where this goes in the future, we're probably just going to keep doing this until we get tired and old. I mean, like AAA, you're a small cog in a big machine, and indie's the other way around. You know, big cog, small machine. And I always found it weird whenever I was working on games that people recognized, like big multi-million-dollar games. People would, you know, be like, "Oh my God, you worked on X, you worked on Y," and you got a lot more kind of like validation from people because everyone recognized it. But I never felt as much like I deserved it because 9 times out of 10 you're specializing in something. You know, you have a very, very small part in the game. Like, you know, I made tire treads for a year, or I made trees for a year, or whatever it is that you're working on. Generally, unless you're very, very high up at some of these studios, you're not making as much of like an impact because you physically can't, like the sheer numbers there. Whereas now, even though a lot less people recognize the games that I work on, I'm way more proud because I can point at it and be like, yeah, that was us, that we did that.
Microphone on. Yeah, so there you go. That was Team Terrible. It's a charming name. As Filipe might know, Dundee is one of the global locuses of the ZX Spectrum because it was manufactured there, and a lot of kids grew up having a Spectrum and learning a program. So game dev, you know, I'm considering making maybe the next film be about Dundee. Maybe somebody's already done it. I don't know. It's it's and also I'm Scottish, so I have an excuse to talk to somebody who's living and working in Scotland is always something I want to do. So anyway, that's it. That is the end of it. That was the last of the incredible set of interviews I was able to collect for this live stream. Thank everybody present and everybody who wasn't able to be here who participated in interviews. Thank you so much. This live stream will be is going to reside on the YouTube page for a while, and the individual interviews I'm going to put up on the Heart of Neon We Are Indiedev homepage. I'm going to have to figure out a more economical way of doing that page because it's getting bulky now, and I'm not a web coder. I'm looking forward to doing the next one. I've already got. If there's anybody here who wants to participate in a We Are IndieDev profile featurette, please reach out, info@heartofneon.com, or just ping me on any of the myriad social media places that I'm still on. Also, if you have anybody you would recommend I should talk to, please let me know. Also, any community programs, any video game collectives, that kind of thing, I definitely want to hear about that and spread the word, because if you haven't, you should read it. Brendan Keogh, the Australian video game academic, wrote a book called The Video Game Industry Does Not Exist. And long story short, he is committed to the idea that local community action by indie devs, and then whilst making global connections, is probably the way forward. He doesn't have a formula. Nobody has a formula, and but I think he's onto something, and that's one of the reasons why I do these live streams, is to share the knowledge, right? If I learn about it, I want you to know about it too, and it's as simple as that. So yeah, I'm gonna say cheerio now. Thank you. I see people are working on typing away in the text chat box there. Thank you again. Thank you for everyone who stuck around. I know a lot of you did. I really appreciate that. And to everybody who's watching this after the fact, thank you for making it to the end. Thank you for your support. Hashtag We Are IndieDev. Support IndieDev, really. If you have a bit of disposable income, most indie devs don't, please give to the charity here, the International Game Developers Association Foundation. Not all, but many of the people who I interview have gone through some aspect of the IGDA Foundation program. The virtual exchange, for example. I've spoken to a number of people who've been part of that. Stacey is one of them. And I'm rambling now. Thank you. I'm going to say cheerio and be safe. Hug a sheep. Play a Jeff Minter game. Take care.